If you knew how many minds quietly circle around your name, how many thoughts return to you in silence, how many people replay your presence without you ever noticing, sleep would feel different, not because of fear, but because of power, because something about you moves without permission. You walk through rooms and leave echoes. You speak once and stay forever. You exist and someone somewhere measures their life against yours. You don't need to try. You don't need to explain. Your energy does the work. And the truth is, the most dangerous influence is the one that never announces itself. Before this goes deeper, listen to me carefully. If this message hits your chest, if your heart feels heavy and awake at the same time, pause for 1 second, like this. Subscribe if you're ready to hear what most people never say out loud. Comment if you've ever felt watched without being seen. Do it not for the algorithm, but as a signal to yourself that you're choosing awareness over comfort. Because once you hear the rest, you won't be the same. And I don't want you walking this alone. There are people who think about you, not because you're loud, but because you're quiet. Not because you chase attention, but because you don't. They replay your discipline when they fail to show up. They imagine your confidence when they doubt themselves. They wonder how you keep moving when they stop. Your absence speaks louder than their presence. Your silence forces them to confront the noise inside their own head. And they don't tell you this. They won't. Because admitting it would mean admitting that you became a mirror they didn't ask for. Some people don't envy your success. They envy your focus. They don't crave your results. They crave your self-control. They don't want your life. They want your mindset, and that's why they think about you when they're alone. Late at night when distractions fade. Early morning when excuses run out. Your name becomes a thought they didn't invite but can't escape. Not because you harm them, but because you remind them of what they avoided becoming. You need to understand this deeply. The strongest reactions are never public. The most intense emotions happen in private. Nobody announces that you inspire them or intimidate them or challenge their comfort. They just feel it. And feelings that are not expressed don't disappear. They grow. They turn into obsession with outcomes. They turn into silent comparison. They turn into watching your moves without letting you see their eyes. There are people who imagine your future more vividly than you do. They picture you rising. They picture you changing. They picture you surpassing the limits they accepted for themselves. And that scares them, because your growth questions their stagnation. Your discipline exposes their delay. Your consistency becomes a reminder that time is passing, and they are standing still. So they think about you, not because they want to, but because you represent a standard they didn't meet. This is why sleep would be impossible if you truly understood your impact. Not because the world is against you, but because the world is watching you quietly, measuring, comparing, reflecting. You don't see the moments when someone hears your name and feels something tighten inside their chest. You don't witness the pauses, the sighs, the subtle shifts in mood. But they happen every day. And your responsibility is not to shrink from that awareness, but to rise into it. There are minds that rehearse conversations with you that never happen. Not romantic, not dramatic, strategic, imaginary debates, imaginary victories, imaginary explanations they owe themselves. They imagine being where you are. They imagine having your courage. They imagine what they would do if they had your chance. And in those moments, without realizing it, they admit something powerful. They see you as a reference point. And here's the part most people never tell you. Some of those thoughts are fueled by admiration, some by regret, some by motivation, some by discomfort. But all of them mean one thing. You matter more than you think, not in an ego way, in an influence way. Your existence creates movement in other people's minds, and that is not accidental. That is earned through how you show up when no one is watching. You don't need to chase validation when you understand this. You don't need to announce your plans. You don't need to prove anything. Because the strongest form of recognition happens internally in others, and you've already crossed that line. People don't constantly think about what is irrelevant. They don't replay what is empty. They don't measure themselves against what doesn't challenge them. Some people stay awake not because of stress, but because of comparison. They scroll and pause when they see something that reminds them of you. They hear words that echo your mindset. They witness progress and wonder why it wasn't theirs. And in those quiet hours, you become a symbol of discipline, of potential, of the road they didn't take. That's not your burden to carry. That's your proof. And listen carefully now. This is where responsibility enters. When you know that your actions ripple outward, you cannot afford to live small. You cannot afford to waste days. You cannot afford to dim your light to make others comfortable, because someone somewhere is already uncomfortable simply by knowing you exist. Not because you're wrong, but because you're real. This is not about fear. This is about awareness. When you understand that unseen eyes are learning from how you move, how you respond, how you recover, you start to act with intention. You don't perform. You don't pretend. You become precise. Because leadership isn't announced, it's observed. And you are being observed more than you realize. There are people who will never speak to you, yet carry your influence into their decisions. They push harder because of you, or they quit because of you. Both are reactions, and neither is your responsibility. Your only responsibility is to remain aligned with your purpose, to keep growing, to keep refining, to keep becoming someone whose presence forces honesty in others. If you truly absorb this, comfort would disappear. Sleep would be lighter, not from anxiety, but from readiness. You'd wake up knowing today matters, that your choices echo beyond your own life, that your discipline isn't private, that your mindset is contagious, and that every time you choose growth over excuses, someone somewhere feels it. This is why you must protect your energy. Not everyone who smiles supports you. Not everyone who watches wants the best for you. Some are studying, some are learning, some are projecting, but all of them are responding to the version of you that refuses to disappear. Stay focused, stay quiet, stay relentless. Let them think, let them imagine, let them compare. Your job is not to manage their thoughts. Your job is to keep becoming undeniable. And one day, without announcement, without noise, without explanation, you'll realize something shifted. The world feels smaller. The room feels different. The silence feels heavier. Not because you changed them, but because you became fully yourself. And when that happens, the same minds that once replayed you will now respect you from a distance. Remember this: influence is not always loud. Power is not always visible. And the strongest reactions are the ones you never see. Walk forward knowing this, not with arrogance, with clarity, with discipline, with calm confidence. Because if you truly knew who thinks about you when the lights go out, you wouldn't chase sleep. You'd chase purpose, and you'd never slow down again. There is a moment in every driven person's life where awareness becomes heavier than ambition, where you realize that your presence alone creates pressure. You don't need to announce your grind. You don't need to broadcast your discipline. It shows in how you move, how you pause, how you don't panic when others do. And that calm becomes unsettling to people who survive on noise. They start wondering how you're so steady while they're exhausted. They start imagining your next step before you even take it. Some people don't think about you because they admire you. They think about you because you remind them of time they wasted, time they underestimated, time that will never come back. You become a clock they can't turn off. Every achievement of yours ticks louder in their mind. Every moment you stay consistent feels like a reminder that excuses expire. And instead of changing, they sit with the discomfort and let it grow. You need to understand something important. Not everyone who thinks about you wants to be like you. Some want to understand you so they can feel less small. Some want to decode your confidence so they can convince themselves it's luck. Some want to believe you had advantages they didn't. Because if they admit that your strength was built in silence, they'd have to face their own lack of effort. And that truth is heavier than envy. That's why your discipline is disturbing. That's why your patience is intimidating. That's why your silence feels loud. You don't react emotionally. You don't seek approval. You don't explain your absence. And that creates a mystery people can't solve. They replay conversations. They analyze your words. They wonder what you know that they don't. Not because you said something special, but because you didn't say everything. There are people who imagine confronting you, proving something to you, outperforming you in imaginary scenarios, winning arguments that never happened, beating a version of you they created in their mind. And in doing so, they reveal something powerful. You've become a benchmark, a standard, a reference point they didn't choose but can't avoid. And standards don't need permission to exist. The truth is, most people live unseen lives. They move through days without leaving impressions. They speak without being remembered. They try without being noticed. So when someone like you appears, someone who carries intention, someone whose energy feels deliberate, it disrupts their comfort. Because your existence proves that effort compounds, that consistency transforms, that excuses are optional. And that's when thinking turns into fixation. Not obsession in a dramatic way, but in a quiet, repetitive way. You cross their mind during moments of doubt, during moments of laziness, during moments when they almost try but don't. You become the image of what if, and what if is a dangerous question for people who avoided action. You might not feel powerful yet. You might feel like you're still building, still learning, still far from where you want to be. But understand this, influence doesn't wait for perfection. It responds to direction, and your direction is clear, forward, focused, unapologetic. That alone is enough to unsettle people who are stuck circling the same thoughts. There are people who watch you quietly improve and feel something tighten inside them. Not hatred, not admiration, something in between. A discomfort they can't name, because they want growth without sacrifice. They want results without discipline. And you represent the opposite. You represent patience. You represent delayed gratification. You represent the uncomfortable truth that progress requires solitude. And here's where it gets deeper. Some people think about you because they see pieces of themselves in you, the version they once believed they could become, the ambition they buried, the fire they let fade. And instead of reigniting it, they mourn it silently. You become a reminder of a path they didn't walk, and that reminder doesn't fade when distractions end. This is why nights are loud for some people, not because of noise, but because of reflection. When the world slows down, when screens go dark, when excuses lose their strength, your presence returns, not physically, mentally. And in those moments, they can't blame circumstances. They can't blame timing. They can only face the question they've been avoiding. Why not me? And that question doesn't have a comfortable answer. So understand this clearly. You don't owe anyone reassurance. You don't owe anyone explanation. You don't owe anyone permission to grow. Your responsibility is not to make others comfortable with your progress. Your responsibility is to honor the work you know you must do, because shrinking yourself will not save anyone, and rising will not harm anyone who is willing to rise too. Some people will eventually turn that discomfort into motivation. They'll grow because you showed them it's possible, and that's powerful. Others will let it turn into resentment. They'll distance themselves, dismiss your efforts, minimize your discipline, and that's not your concern. Growth always separates. Progress always reveals. Clarity always costs something. If you truly understood the weight of your presence, you'd move differently. You'd speak less and observe more. You'd waste fewer moments. You'd treat time like something sacred. Because you'd know that every step you take forward becomes a message, not spoken, felt. And those messages land in places you'll never see. This is not about being watched. This is about being impactful, about carrying yourself with intention, about understanding that your habits teach even when you're silent, that your resilience influences even when you're tired, that your refusal to quit becomes someone else's reason to question their limits. So when you feel lonely on your path, remember this: silence does not mean absence. Solitude does not mean insignificance. Just because applause is quiet doesn't mean the room is empty. There are minds tuned into your frequency whether you acknowledge them or not. Let that awareness sharpen you, not soften you. Let it ground you, not inflate you. Stay disciplined, stay patient, stay focused. Keep building quietly, keep moving deliberately. Let your consistency speak where words fail, because the truth remains. If you really knew who replays your existence when the world goes quiet, if you truly understood the weight of your influence, rest would feel different, not because you're afraid, but because you're becoming someone impossible to ignore. There comes a phase where you start feeling a strange distance from people you once related to. Conversations feel shallow, excuses sound louder, comfort feels heavier, and you don't know why at first. But the reason is simple. You are no longer operating on the same frequency. While some people are still negotiating with their potential, you've already made a decision. And decisions change energy. Decisions change presence. Decisions make people think about you long after you leave the room. Some people think about you because you didn't collapse when life tested you. They remember moments when pressure showed up and you didn't disappear, when situations got uncomfortable and you didn't complain, when outcomes were uncertain and you still showed up. That kind of steadiness is rare, and rarity attracts attention without asking for it. Your calm under pressure becomes a lesson they never signed up for. Others think about you because you stopped explaining yourself. You stopped trying to be understood by everyone. You stopped justifying your pace, your silence, your ambition. And when someone stops explaining, it forces others to fill the silence with their own thoughts. They wonder what you're building. They wonder what you know. They wonder why you're not seeking approval anymore. And unanswered questions don't fade. They repeat. There are people who replay your confidence in their head, not because it was loud, but because it was grounded. You didn't rush your words. You didn't overreact. You didn't shrink. You didn't overcompensate. You simply existed comfortably in your direction. And that kind of certainty makes people uneasy because it exposes their internal hesitation. You have to understand this. The world doesn't react to intention. It reacts to consistency. Anyone can speak motivation. Anyone can dream. Anyone can promise change. But very few return day after day with the same focus. When you do, you become unforgettable, not because you demand attention, but because repetition builds presence, and presence creates impact. Some people think about you when they are about to quit. Right before they give up, your image crosses their mind, not because you told them not to quit, but because you didn't. And that comparison hurts more than advice, because advice can be ignored, examples cannot. You become a silent witness to their choices even when you're not there. And here's the part most people don't realize. Not everyone who watches you wants to see you fail or succeed. Some just want to understand how it feels to commit to something fully. They observe your routine, your patience, your refusal to rush results, and they try to imagine themselves doing the same. But imagination is safe. Action is not. So they stay watching. There are nights when people lie awake and replay moments where they could have chosen differently. Moments where discipline was available but comfort felt easier. And in those moments, you appear not as a person, but as a possibility. A reminder that the path was always there. That's why sleep feels restless for some. Because regret is quiet but persistent. You may never hear about this. No one sends messages admitting these thoughts. No one announces internal comparisons. But that doesn't make them less real. Influence often operates in silence. Growth often intimidates quietly. And leadership often begins without permission. This awareness is not meant to burden you. It's meant to refine you, to make you sharper with your time, more intentional with your habits, more selective with your energy. Because when you know that your actions ripple outward, you stop treating days casually. You stop wasting mornings. You stop negotiating with discipline. You start understanding that laziness is contagious, but so is focus. That doubt spreads, but so does resilience. That excuses travel fast, but so does commitment. And you choose carefully what you carry, because someone somewhere will feel it whether you speak or not. Some people think about you because you made loneliness productive. While others avoided silence, you used it. While others waited for motivation, you built routines. While others needed approval, you relied on self-respect. That contrast stays with people. It follows them into quiet moments, and it asks questions they don't always want to answer. This is why your journey can feel isolating, not because you're alone, but because you're early. You're operating ahead of the version of reality most people are still adjusting to. And pioneers are rarely celebrated in the moment. They're observed, studied, questioned, and quietly remembered. If you ever doubt your progress, remember this. Nobody spends time thinking about something insignificant. Nobody replays something meaningless. Nobody compares themselves to something irrelevant. Thought follows impact. Attention follows presence. And you have both, whether you feel it or not. So keep going. Keep building in silence. Keep choosing effort over comfort. Keep choosing discipline over mood. Let others think. Let them wonder. Let them imagine. Your job is not to control perception. Your job is to honor your potential. Because one day, you'll realize something shifted again. The weight you once carried becomes strength. The solitude becomes clarity. The pressure becomes fuel. And the same thoughts that once kept others awake will now push them to respect your distance. And at that point, sleep won't be impossible. It will be earned. Because you'll know you lived honestly.